my camera's gonna look fucked, but that's okay.
Your camera
It
looks
is what it is.
your camera looks beautiful, baby. All right, we're having a conversation with my guy Layman, who is definitely not Dr. Layman, but non-coincidentally has a name very similar, and didn't know Dr. Layman, I'm sorry, existed at the time he made his name. Layman, what have we been up to?
Nothing. I've just before we started hitting record, I was telling Mr. Liberal Sanity Project here.
Please, that's my father. Call me LSP.
I was telling him that about a new direction I'm taking my YouTube channel in, wiping everything clean of all the political stuff, though there will be some political stuff that comes in, but it's not going to be the main goal. It's going to be kind of just a means to an end. Where now I'm going to start working on making like zero budget films, fucking movies, like real movies. So right now I'm working on a movie. It's called Doom Scroll. That's going to be the name of the movie. And it's going to be about a person who he gets it opens up, he gets a call from his work. His work says, don't come in tomorrow. There's a pandemic. So then before this call happens, there's a title card saying March 13th, 2020 to establish the time that we're in. And it's going to be about, okay, the COVID pandemic. This person is isolated and he's isolating himself because of COVID. And how does that affect his mental health? And while he is isolated, like many people, millennial and Gen Z, became a little obsessed with social media during that time. And so this is like this. So it's like this kind of like psychological thriller / horror thing, but like zero budget, about this guy who develops a social media addiction, and he convinces himself that all the terminally online discourses that people have are like real existential things that are happening in the world, and that he's going to stop them, and he has to stop them through his shit posting and his arguments online. And it's going to be very visual. There's going to be a lot of like, I want to see like how much I can do with as little tools as possible.
I take it you're playing the role of the victim of COVID here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get like some, and I'm in the process, and I want to have like, so it's gonna be like him isolated, and then it's gonna be that spliced with him having these like terminally online conversations with people. Little meta, given what we're doing right now. But
that just makes it very timely. But continue.
Yeah, but he's going to be having like a lot of these little super online conversations. Nothing like this though, where we're just kind of shooting the shit. But like I want to have one conversation that's like, this is actually a conversation you and I had one time. There's gonna be like a necrophilia debate.
Which role did I play in this?
No. You're not the terminally online guy. I'm the terminally online.
Oh, good.
In it.
I'm
the one who's terminally online.
I'm the true layman.
He's talking to people who are also online, but you don't know to what degree they're terminally online. You don't know.
What is this necrophilia conversation? I don't remember this. What was our conversation?
We had this. It was a open Prime Kai's panel. And I didn't even.
It was the goofiest conversations on Prime Kai, but go on. What was it? I don't remember.
I didn't even know that he was streaming. I just saw you and him in his server chilling, but he was streaming. I didn't know he was streaming, and I just joined. And then you and I started having a debate about whether or not necrophilia should be legalized in certain circumstances. And I was on the affirmative, never. And you said, well, if it says in their will,
your body is your property. Your body is your property.
And everybody consents, then what's the problem with it? And that was the debate.
A sex worker is a sex worker for life and death, bro. There's nothing wrong with that, man. The pro-liberty position is you got to support people's bodily autonomy.
But in this movie, I want to have stuff like that. Maybe nothing like that wild, but like stuff that I want it to be kind of like a conversation that real people are having, but also not a lot of real people are having.
Pizzagate?
So like I was
Something
thinking,
like Pizzagate, which leads to real world consequences too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, all of this does technically. I was thinking like what? So one thing I want to have is I want to have him be like an anti-Zionist guy, but I want to like steelman it. I want it to feel like a real anti-Zionist person that you'd see in the real world. And then I would have like a friend of mine have the like pro-Zionist, like a pro-Zionist position, but like a normal pro-Zionist position, to contrast to me losing my sanity.
You mean like Israel's just been our greatest ally in the Middle East, the only functioning democracy? You know, we have a duty to protect them from terrorism because we're fighting terrorists too. Something to that effect?
Something like that. And then they would have some like caveats, like, but like they do some bad stuff too, the settlements, yada yada, just like a normal Israel-Palestine position, versus like me, who has like the vehemently like, and I'd go into how like like I wouldn't say like the Jews run everything explicitly, but I would make it a little more vague.
You're
and a little more
alluding to the
realistic.
Zog, the great Zog.
Like alluding to it, like implying it, but not being explicit. Like I would say something like, I would say some like real things, like lead in with some like real concerns people have, like, oh yeah, I think Israel is engaging in an ethnic cleansing against the Palestinians. I think they're starving them, they're bombing them, and it's awful. Like stuff that like normal,
This is a very
typically
online,
hear people say.
online leftist kind of position.
Yeah. Well, it would be something like, it would start off with something like that, and then it would get into more like, and the United States funds them a lot, and it feels like this tiny little. Yeah. Well, yeah, it would be kind of a leftist position, and it would feel like I just want it to be like a weird position. I'm not thinking of it left, right. I'm thinking like just a weird, uncommon position, but is still normal enough where you could see somebody believing it for real.
So there are people who, I'm sorry, and?
Yeah, and so what I would do is I would say like, and like the United States, we give a lot of our tax dollars to them. And it feels like, this is where it starts to get weird, really weird, is it feels like this is a very tiny country in the world that has a lot of influence over the United States. It seems like a lot of big people in media have like a connection to Israel. They seem like they are in favor of Zionism. So I wouldn't say like they're Jews in the media. I'd say something more vague. Like there's a lot of like a lot of Zionists are in the media and stuff. A lot of people who are very pro-Israel, who support the genocide against the Palestinians. I would say something like this. Keep it vague, but also like trying to logically, it like logically follows to like the Jewish conspiracy a little bit, right?
Here's I'm sorry. Can I ask something of a meta question on this?
Sure.
Do you see that you might have a role in influencing somebody's position by laying out a sensibly terminally online position? That it might not seem. Some people believe already what your crazy terminally online person does, and they take it even steps further from that. That's what. That's not uncommon, is what I'm getting at. It might.
No, I understand. I understand. I'm not trying to. So remember, this is in the context of a broader narrative in a film, right? Mm-hmm. This is not. This conversation isn't existing in a vacuum, because the whole point of this character is that he's losing his fucking sanity as he's isolating himself from the world. And I'm going to and there's a lot of visual cues showing that. And when he's getting unhinged in these debates, there's going to be, it's not just going to be the raw conversation as we're having it right now, right? It's going to be like, there's going to be some editing. Like none of these lights I have on me are going to be turned on. It's going to be very dim lighting. It's going to look very lo-fi, very rough, high contrast. I'm going to look a little fucking spooky probably because of how I'll have the lighting. And I have a whole score that I've already made. I have like over an hour of score that I've made for this movie, completely done. Really, and cool. It's very unsettling score. There's going to be unsettling music cues while I'm saying all these things. It's going to be very strongly signaling to the audience, this guy, maybe he's unhinged. He might be saying some real shit that real people believe, but he sounds fucking unhinged. And he's obviously not coming at this from a mentally well place. That's going to be the overall point, is this guy is not mentally well. Even if somebody, and I want it to be realistic, because if somebody actually believes this and then they watch this movie, they might reevaluate something about themselves, right?
Is there
they might
a real
be like,
world
maybe
I'm to this character?
What do you mean?
I mean,
like with me, did I ever have
like when I think of the character you're describing, I'm thinking of the guy who went up and shot up the Comet Pizza because the gate was something he read on 4chan or Twitter. In fact, that's another question I could ask is, what is the means of what's the format that you're going to use to see this guy become indoctrinated, to see this guy become more and more reclusive? Like when I think of like the most reclusive people, I think 4chan uses, right? Which, although still ubiquitous, like tends to see the kind of same conspiratorial mentality you would only see in somebody who is terminally online. But which
Yeah.
one are you going to go with?
I'm not going to go with a 4chaner. I don't want to go with a specific subgroup of internet person. I want him to just seem like a lonely, mentally ill guy who just picks up all these hodgepodges of different beliefs online. So he's not going to have, I want him to be kind of ideologically ambiguous. Most people who are like this are. The guys who go and shoot up schools. I don't want to go that far because I don't think that's most people who were negatively impacted when it comes to their mental health by the COVID pandemic. I also want to have, and I also have so the visual cues that I'm using are, I'm going to have a contrast between, so when the main character is in a isolated environment, like a socially isolated environment, it's black and white. When he's not, it's in color. Now, the online portions are going to be in color, but then it's going to cut off of the internet at the end of these conversations, and you're going to see these like lonely, discordant shots, these wide shots of him at his computer, black and white. He's fucking alone. And I'm doing that to show that contrast. When you're online like this, having these kinds of conversations, you are plugged in. You think this is the world. I'm tuned in. I know the truth, all this shit. And then when you turn off the fucking computer, it's like, oh, I'm actually just a lonely guy in a fucking bedroom. And the visual cues are obvious. Like, I do not make these super vague in this movie.
When do you suppose it's when is this coming out?
I don't know. So I started making this 2 weeks ago. I started writing this 2 weeks ago, and I have it all mapped out. I don't know if it's going to be a short film or a full-length film, but I think it's going to be a full-length film because of all the stuff I want to do in it. I want to have a lot of weird symbolic shit in it too. Like, I'm a big David Lynch fan, and I've been watching David Lynch a lot, so there's a lot of David Lynch influence in it. Because I want it to feel very dream-like. I want it to feel
David
because
like
that's a lot of
Eraserhead,
people,
right? That's Eraserhead.
He made Eraserhead, but
okay.
I'm mostly thinking of like.
Have you ever
like
done
Mulholland
psychedelics
Drive.
per chance?
No.
Okay, if you ever do psychedelics, make sure you watch Eraserhead while doing it. Okay, just have fun with that. You'll see some good shit. All right.
Yeah, I've seen Eraserhead, just not high.
I've seen Eraserhead too, just never. But it's on my. Put it on your bucket list, buddy.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm gonna have that, and yeah, some of the more Lynchian stuff I want to have in the movie, like, so he's gonna have like an online friend in the movie, and then there's gonna be a twist involving this online friend that turns out he's not as close to this guy as he thought he was. He didn't know a lot about this guy as much as he thought he did. He's an oomphy. It's someone he talks to in Discord. Most of the online conversation, the way I'm having it is there's like these kind of like, time passing, a lot of cross dissolving sections of him just on his phone. And that's like a lot of the movie, but like it's black and white and he's in the house and there's a sense of dread. That's what I'm mostly hitting on, is like when he's not online and when he's not outdoors, there's a sense of dread. And I actually have a character that is supposed to represent the concept of dread. Character has no dialogue. It's kind of this, just like, when you watch those YouTube videos and it's like ghost spotted in blah blah blah, and it's like probably fake, obviously, but
usually.
like
I don't think anybody's actually getting a ghost on camera.
Yeah. But it does kind of spook you sometimes because it is kind of like just the way it's filmed. Even if you just suspend your disbelief, it's kind of freaky. So I found out how to do kind of those sorts of filmmaking tricks. So the movie, like the opening of the movie starts with a jump scare. The first jump scare I've ever made. And I think and I showed a bunch of my friends this jump scare. I'm not going to say what the jump scare is. I'm not going to like show the jump scare. No, it doesn't matter how much I describe it. You don't know until you see it. Okay. But when the jump scare, the thing that is jumping at you is the concept of dread. And so
dread personified in a ghostly form.
Dread personified, yeah. Except the person doesn't he doesn't have dialogue. And it's just a silhouette of a figure. It's not like a character,
shadow figure. Yeah, so you can see the details of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and yeah, in fact, after the stream, I can show you the opening scene if you like.
I would be very interested in seeing that. I'm a big horror fan. Okay, let's how about we move on to more real world politics and less fake YouTube video shit you're gonna make. Okay. I shouldn't phrase it like that. I'm just kidding.
It's all right.
one thing about your political journey that's always kind of struck to me is you seem to have an affinity with centrism. Um, while how do I think of you? You're annoyingly centrist with little sprinkles of like Christian Democrat layered on.
Sometimes, yeah.
And somehow, like,
just to be clear, I consider Christian Democrat a centrist ideology. Like some Christian Democrats don't think of it that way, but like it basically is in practice.
yeah,
Like a Christian Democratic Party is a centrist party. It's just like on social issues, they're like center right, but it's still like I consider center right and center left. That's still the center. It's just you lean more right or you lean more left. Like someone like center right to me would be like Ronald Reagan. That's like center right to me, you know?
It's interesting that you say that because when I think of Ronald Reagan's presidency, I think of like one of the most consequential presidencies that fundamentally reshaped the U.S. economy, arguably in a way that's only come worse. Right? We went from a tried, true, and tested Keynesian model that basically created the American middle class, and we moved to this more neoliberal model that empowered corporate powers and kind of.
Those were his more right wing stuff, sure, but he also had some left wing positions for his time too.
Like what?
So he legalized no-fault divorce. That was very controversial. That was very controversial in the 80s.
It's interesting that there's people who want to... I'm sorry, continue.
Who are Reaganites, yeah.
Yeah, you know where I'm going with it.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Right? This is what I find interesting. When I look at a lot of leaders in the past, another left-wing thing is open borders. He supported open borders.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I find this really interesting. I noticed this a lot when I really dug into Canada's prime ministers and learning about the kinds of policies they had. So, for example, one of our prime ministers is Brian Mulroney. Yep. So this was like, people consider this guy like our Ronald Reagan because he was like very pro-free trade and he did like a lot of austerity politics and he supported free markets. So people think he's like a right-wing guy. But then when you look at his policies, all of them collectively, it's like, oh, this guy also like supported affirmative action. He actually brought affirmative action to Canada. And it's like, oh shit, this guy isn't like a right winger, really. And then today, well, not today because he died a year ago, but up until he died, he advocated for like a UBI, right? And like, so he has like a lot of nuanced position, and something he would always say to every new prime minister. So whenever someone first becomes a prime minister, he has like a meeting with them and counsels them because he was a very successful prime minister. He won back to back some of the biggest majorities in our history, and he always says, the number one thing you have to do is govern from the center. And he said that to everybody. And it's but he's known as a
mode of like, well, did he mean that as like a mode of compromise? Like what is, so here's what I'm getting at. I don't necessarily know what the value of governing from the center is or means in a world of increasingly polar extremes.
Polarized extremes, yeah, I understand.
And well, let me elaborate further on my issue. You look at and this, I would say this doesn't necessarily only exist in the American right as a context, but it's most observable in it. Because everywhere in the world there's democratic backsliding, but in the American right it's very pronounced. When I look at the extremes of the right, I have a vision for the world that I can see where they're heading. It makes sense. And when I do the same with the left, I get a vision for the world, and you can even and left can be nuanced. It could be liberal left, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be socialist left. I could still see a direction and path that this is an ideology where it can sensibly take me. When I look at centrists, I don't know what a centrist advocates for that they're building towards like 100 years in the future. We're going 100 years in the future in centrist rule. What does the world look like?
It depends on the person in power. This is the thing, right? Like, so the way I view so I don't view centrism as like this normative thing. Like this is how everybody should be, because I don't agree with like centrists internally in a lot of stuff. And they don't agree with me internally in a lot of stuff. And they don't agree with each other internally in a lot of stuff. There are politicians you can find throughout history that are center-leaning descriptively, that are like fundamentally different than other center-leaning politicians. I've used centrism as just a description. It just means your average views of things. Some of them you agree with this side, some of them you agree with this side, and you maybe have like a temperamental predisposition against like radical stuff. And that's kind of all it means. And I just view it as a description of how somebody is. I don't view it as something that I normatively need to be. And I don't think individual centrists do either, because if you ask a centrist, like, what is your position on abortion? What is your position on gun control? What is your position on taxes? What is your position on...
These tend to be radical stuff, right?
Well, it's on each of those, they're pretty much always going to lean one way or the other. So I don't view it as like, you could have a middle ground position too. Sometimes you do. But generally speaking, like, you're going to lean one way or the other often on a lot of these things if you're really invested in those kinds of issues. And so what often happens, I find, is the average centrist is just amalgamation of certain left of center positions and certain right of center positions, and it's just roughly equal. Maybe like if someone's like, and if it's like gun to your head, more left or more right, pick one. If they say left, it's like, okay, you're center left. If they say right, it's like, okay, you're center right. But like, that's kind of how I view it. I don't view it as like a movement.
No, I understand how you view it, but it so it still isn't addressing my frustration. When in an American context, when people use centrist, it usually just means right leaning and not wanting the baggage of being Republican or conservative in this country because they're associated with so much just generally nasty shit. They tend to enable, and again, this might just be an American context, but even in a Canadian context, I'm not even sure this would hold true, because it's still directionless. I still don't have an idea for what centrists actually stand for, and saying it varies from person to person doesn't do much to add to a conversation where we're more and more defined by the extremes on either ends. Like, Kamala Harris is a communist to some people, right? We don't, in a sensible world, she'd be a center-left Democrat, you know? But you know, we don't need to, I don't need to entertain extreme stupidity to see where Kamala Harris actually would head as a center-left Democrat. I can look at her policies, and I can basically say she's carving out a progressive vision for the future, generally progressive vision.
That's fine.
But most centrists...
I'm not saying Kamala is a centrist.
No, I'm not saying you are. but I'm saying that centrists don't seem to add much to the conversation that we need, as far as our political discourse goes.
I mean, if someone... I don't really... See, when I talk to people who say they're left or right or center, I don't really care if they're left or right or center. I care about, like, what are you adding to the conversation? That's the most important thing. I agree with you there. And like, I just think any individual can. Like, you can be left-wing and be very intelligent. You can be right-wing, very intelligent. You can be center-leaning and very intelligent. You can also be all those things and be pretty fucking stupid too. And that's all I care about. Like, I don't think centrists broadly care about advancing a vision, right? So you're saying, I don't see the vision that they're bringing. I don't see the what worldview this broad group of people are putting forward. But I agree. I just
can
don't
I ask
think that's
a
the
question
point.
before you continue your answer?
Sure.
Isn't that an issue if you're playing a game with so many people's lives? I'm recognizing politics fundamentally as a game. Shouldn't we have a vision for the future?
You should have a vision of the future. I just don't think there's a homogenous centrist vision of the future.
Okay. I guess I don't see the utility of it then. I don't.
Well,
I don't
it doesn't. It's not a matter of utility. It's a matter of description. It's just describing a vague general direction someone's leaning in. I view the same thing with left. If someone's more left, that's just a description of who they are. Left-wing people don't agree on a vision of the world either. Left-wing includes left of center is a category that includes Vladimir Lenin and Hillary Clinton somehow. Okay? When these people are nothing alike. Some people think they're alike. I don't think they're anything alike.
They might not be alike necessarily in, you know, if you go policy by policy, but they both stand for a position.
Or ideologically, they're not.
Well, there's trends, right? Like,
no,
the liberals
not with them.
Yeah, no. Let me explain. A liberal solution and a communist solution might touch on the same issues and steer them towards the same direction, but ultimately end up at different points. Right?
No, so, I don't agree.
Really? Communists tend to advance women's rights in the same way liberals do, right?
I totally disagree with that. Especially Stalin, he advanced women's rights.
No, not Stalin. But I'm saying, like, communist ideology and liberal ideology.
Communism's an economic philosophy. It's not a social philosophy. Unless I mean, there's kind of a blurred line between those things, but I don't think communism says anything about women's rights specifically.
It breaks.
It's more of an economic thing.
No, it's very analytical about how human beings are constructed as classes, set classes with different or
right economic classes, not
it's not
gender
solely
groups.
Economic classes. But I understand what you're saying. But
what I'm saying is that
yes,
being a communist does not necessarily entail that you have to support women's rights or individual rights at all. Really, a lot of communist ideas are, if anything, I would say, very antithetical to individual rights, and that's where the liberal communist conflict often comes from. Usually, it's pertaining to property rights, but property doesn't just mean businesses. It also is a category that extends to many other things, like your own body, your life, your
on that note, your property rights, as far as your body goes, would seem to fall under the umbrella of both liberal and communist. Like both would recognize your body as a form of property worthy of protection.
I don't think so necessarily on the communist side. No.
You don't think communists would see your body as an extension of yourself?
I think some do. I think in practice, communist governments, when they get power, do not.
Yes, in practice. I mean, I can't.
Practice is all that really matters to me.
Not true communists. I can't say like not true fucking communists. It's fucking frustrating. I know what you mean in practice. I'm not trying to look at things in practice, just more in the abstract.
I have a more interesting point though. That sure. I think with the in practice thing, I do think that there is something about the ideology itself that does reject that bodily autonomy in practice, because property, traditionally, in the classically liberal view, the definition of property doesn't just apply to money and business and commerce. It applies to so many other things. So while there may be an intent to define property in a way that only includes commerce and things like that, these things are very nebulously defined. So in practice, you do have even communists often conflating these two things, this bodily autonomy idea and the property rights idea. And they're being conflated because they are the same thing, descriptively. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense.
Yeah.
I don't see us sliding back into a world where communism is any real competing force again.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Fuck no.
Are you familiar with Francis Fukuyama's The End of History?
Yeah, I'm a big Fukuyama fan, though I'm more interested in what he thinks today, because his opinions on things have changed a lot over time.
Oh, does he no longer believe that? Well, I mean, it's kind of evident, actually, that
he still thinks
democracy. He still thinks what?
He still thinks liberal democracy is the best system that's ever existed.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's transparently backsliding.
But he is concerned about that. So he wrote a book in 2022 or 23 that's really good. It's very short. You can read it in a day. It's called Liberalism and Its Discontents. And he kind of like internally critiques liberalism as a liberal in it. And he's basically trying to say, like, liberalism encompasses a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those things, if you focus too much on one thing, comes into conflict with other things. So he thinks that right now there's a big problem where there was like the neoliberal right. So there was the liberal right under people like Reagan and people like Thatcher and people of this persuasion.
People like Pinochet. That's a joke for the libertarians. I'm not serious. You've heard that argument though, right?
Sure. Oh yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, and people like this who they hyper fixated so much on the property rights thing that they kind of left all these other concerns that liberals have traditionally had under the bus, like concerns with like the welfare of the disadvantaged and the minority not being oppressed by the majority, and not seeing how business can apply to that and stuff like that, right? And so he's saying that, like, you know, the liberalism's inability to kind of argue against, or sorry, not argue against, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, respond to the criticisms of that idea in a way that like normal people can understand is leading to a global rise of populism. So like even though populist left is not as popular as populist right is right now by far, and Fukuyama says this explicitly, and it's just true. It's not. It's still more popular than it was in like the 2000s. Still, it's way more popular, and it's way more popular for that reason. A lot of liberal institutions don't respond to these things very well, and he thinks the same thing of how liberals respond to right populists as well. So he thinks that left liberals have an issue where left liberals' main concern is like the rights of the minority for the most part. So individual rights of LGBT people and racial minorities like black people and indigenous people. In my country, it's mostly indigenous, more than black. Your country, it's more black than indigenous. And if that makes sense, given our histories. And that focus is not, and he doesn't think it's a bad thing to care about. Of course, Fukuyama's not a racist guy, at least not to my understanding. But maybe he's secretly, I don't know. But he thinks that he thinks that left liberals today focus on that perhaps to the detriment of some of say like the rights of like the majority.
What is he suggesting the left liberals focus on instead?
Well, it's not he's not saying don't focus on that. He's saying that you just have to do it responsibly, and you can't do it to the detriment of say like tolerance of people who are different than you and the pluralism that motivates the whole idea of like freedom of speech and things like this. He thinks that there may be an undermining of that if you can't respond to these. I'm going to give you a personal example because I don't remember his exact examples because I haven't read this book since it came out, so I don't remember exactly what he said. Go read the book though; it's great. But I think something that I've noticed with this is I think the COVID pandemic is probably the best example of this. Now, and I don't want to sound like I'm a COVID denialist because I'm not. I think the vaccines work. I think the vaccines work. I've been boosted. I've been jabbed many times in my life, and I think they work. But I think that a lot of people who were skeptical of that because, and this is a reason that I don't think is broadly acknowledged by the lib left, or was when COVID was a thing, was that there was this very, very sudden change out of nowhere that was very unprecedented, that was very heavy-handed. Now, whether that was justified or not is a different question. It was heavy-handed. And when that happens very suddenly out of nowhere, people are kind of like, whoa, hold on. We're getting real heavy-handed with this. I am a generic fucking guy who goes to work every day and comes home and watches fucking Netflix and hangs out with my kids and shit. I don't fucking know anything about this shit. So I can't sit there and pour through all the scientific data on COVID vaccines. I don't fucking know anything about COVID vaccines. And I literally don't know anything about COVID vaccines. I just have a faith. I trust that they're not going to fucking poison me. And that's all it is. I don't know anything about the science of the vaccines. And most people don't. And now most people took the vaccine without issue. Most people had that faith. But for those who didn't, I don't think a lot of media institutions did a good job responding to that, because you can't just give facts. You can't just say these are the facts and that's it. You have to give the facts in a way that is appeasing the moral intuitions and the sort of what's the word that I'm thinking of when you're the personality trait where you're more nervous, the more neurotic side of people. That's the word. Neurotic.
What is so offensive to the moral intuitions of people about the vaccine that we couldn't trust the media to tell us straight up facts? Like, why do people trust
because
and RFK Jr. over actual professionals
because
on this issue?
Because facts are never given in a vacuum. So you have to frame facts within people's intuitions towards the world to convince them that those facts are real. If you can't do that, people will not accept facts. And that is a part of human nature. So I'm not saying it's good that that's the case. I think that that's just a fact.
No, that people is a fact.
Have to have that. Yes.
But I'm wondering how you do that in an age where there's a disinformation jihad waged 24/7 even by Russian bot farms and authoritarian regimes and people with an interest to get rich off of the grift. Capitalism seems to kind of be working against itself here and the conditions it's creating when you have free access platforms like Twitter with no real moderation over the disinformation that's put out there. You noticed recently, like Twitter got banned in Brazil over an issue just similar to this. Is would Fukuyama support that? Like, would this be the answer to addressing this?
Oh, well, just to be clear, I'm not, like I said at the beginning, this is what I think. I'm not speaking for Fukuyama.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, okay. Like, if we're continuing if we're looking at Fukuyama's observations about the failures of liberalism, what would Fukuyama think is a solution that answers people's issues without offending their moral intuition?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, again, can't speak for Fukuyama. As for me, like, what I try to do is you just need to make people feel like you care about them. And that's really it. It's not like, I know that's not a good answer, like, because it's not, and I understand that, but like people's
Is there any chance you hear this?
People, I hear
what are
this.
you doing?
People's intuitions towards the world are just there. So people just have to make you. This is the thing, right? These are very individual things. So you have to find a way to, like, when you're talking to individual people, you just have to do that. Like, don't assume. This is what I do. If somebody is nervous about vaccines, say something that would just personally appeal to them. Learn a little bit about them and just see what would appeal to them. So, for example, in my own life, my aunt and uncle. So my uncle he's a small business owner in Ontario. He runs a catering business. And he works like fucking 80 hours a week. He doesn't research vaccines. He doesn't know anything about this shit. He's just trying to run his business. And then when the COVID stuff happened, he had these intuitions too, because he's more inclined to have those intuitions. And so he was convinced to take the vaccine because my aunt has a bunch of immuno issues. And she said, take that fucking vaccine or I might die. And he said, you know what? That's a good fucking reason to take the vaccine. I'm going to take the vaccine. So
I'm glad that worked for them, but I actually made that exact argument. What's that?
To be clear.
What are you not saying?
There is no way that this works for everybody. Okay? Fucking Tim Pool is gone. He's gone. He's making so much money off of those people who are gone, right? You can't you're not like, media orgs are not changing those people's minds. The best thing those media orgs can do is say, so I understand why you guys who are watching, this is what they need to do. When they're responding to disinformation, they need to talk to people like they are talking to the viewers of these content creators, not that they're talking to everybody else. Because I think a big problem, I mostly see this from politicians. My own prime minister is guilty of this. He's probably the biggest example I can think of. When Justin Trudeau is trying to clarify information about vaccines, he's always saying it to get a dunk on the anti-vaxxers. Now, if you don't agree with anti-vaxxers, that's very satisfying to watch, of course, right? But the people who are satisfied with that, they're not the ones who need to hear that. Because they're already taking the fucking vaccine. They're fine. They understand. But what I think a responsible prime minister would do is he would tell the anti-vaxxers, I understand your concerns about this. These are very sudden changes that have happened seemingly out of nowhere, and I get that. But our scientific institutions, they are the best available people who are equipped to deal with this right now. If we don't trust, we don't have an alternative to them. So I understand your hesitation to take this vaccine, but if we don't have an alternative. You can't say what is the alternative. There is no alternative to this. So that's why I'm encouraging you to take it. And don't do like vaccine mandates that don't do anything. So something that Trudeau did, this is what sparked the whole trucker protest that happened. And those trucker people are fucking stupid, okay? Totally disavow. Those people were fucking, can I say the R word on your YouTube channel?
I mean, or
you get taken down?
I don't give a shit, man. Go for it.
Okay. They are retards. Every single, like, all those fucking people are retarded. They're retarded. They just, honestly, a lot of those people are retarded. But I'm referring to the organizers when I say that, okay? The people who were just fucking suckered into that, okay, those people were just fucking dealt a bad hand or some shit and were just suckered into this shit. But I think that a responsible leader of a country should not do policies that don't meaningfully do anything to incite things like that. Because the policy he brought in that incited that, he wanted truckers who were coming across the border to be vaccinated. And that was it. So he wasn't. So this is a group of people who inside of a vehicle, their entire job, they are not interacting with other people. So whatever COVID spread was mitigated by this policy, in my opinion, maybe there was some. I don't think there was a lot. There's not really any evidence that
I don't assume
anything.
They're in their truck for the entire trip. I assume at some point they're getting out and using the bathroom, taking a shower, getting some food.
They might go to a fucking diner and take a piss and leave, right? But they're not fucking. What I'm saying is, sure, that
might. You're money. You're handling doors. People don't sanitize their hands. But yeah,
I am not. I don't want to say that there was nothing that was mitigated by this. I'm sure there was some.
Okay, however, what you're saying it wasn't worth
it wasn't worth going through the fucking massive insane, deranged motherfucking blockades that happen across the country because a bunch of people felt inspired to do so because our leader decided to act like a fucking dick. Okay, like that's all I'm saying. That was not worth. He brought in emergency powers that we never brought in our country's history to deal with those people that set a really bad precedent in my opinion, because I have no doubt in my mind the next left-wing protest that happens when the conservatives win the next election, they're like, okay, we're now good to use these emergency protest squashing powers now because the fucking last PM did it and he got away with it because he wanted to own the anti-vaxxers so bad, right? So I'm not saying that, like, this is what I mean. Like, this is the problem with that is an issue with the lib left that I think is going to bite progressives in the ass in my country, is like, you can't make owning the right the goal. You just got to believe in certain things, operate within the institutions that you can, and then just try to invite as many people into the pie as possible to agree with those progressive ideas. And I'd say the same thing to conservatives too. Don't call it, when you're calling all the LGBTs groomers and you're calling women childless cat ladies, like suburban women, and you're like waging a war on childless people. That's fucking weird. That's alienating, and it's gonna bite you in the fucking ass when the fucking election comes up.
But it's a good representative of the character for the movie you're gonna make. This seems to be a we're not on the precipice. We're well past. We are in the midst of a crisis of masculinity, and the chief purveyors of this crisis have been on the right, the political and cultural right.
You're talking about the red pill dudes, right?
Yeah, and I'm seeing some. I mean, the anti-populism and anti-democratic memery tends to like tie into this because go figure, the same group of people don't tend to much support democracy. They cheerlead people, or institutions or groups which are fundamentally hostile to democracy. So what's going on with men, I guess, is our more fundamental issue. What's going on with men?
Well, I think there's we're changing topics, but it's fine. That's fine. I fuck with it because it does kind of tie into everything else. What's going on with men? Well, here's the thing. So everybody says this male loneliness epidemic, right? Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Men are lonelier. Totally agree. I think women are also lonelier. I think it's different, right? But I think everybody is lonelier, but it's not for the same reasons. So I find the stats. So here's the thing, right? I think women are just okay with being lonelier a lot of the time. Not all of them, but regardless of whether or not they're subjectively okay with it, doesn't mean that it's good for them. So I think loneliness, I think, is a new thing that's happening. This loneliness epidemic is happening because of social media. And I'm going to sound like a boomer. It's the phones. It's the phones. Okay? It's the phones. It is so easy to not go outside and not interact with people face to face, which is going to establish a far more meaningful connection. Not that you can't form meaningful connections online. Okay? Mm-hmm. But the connection is obviously way stronger like you and I are friends, but I'm sure we would be much closer friends
That's what you
if
think,
we fucking live near each
perpetually
other.
online guy.
True. But what I'm saying is, if you and I lived a fucking block from each other, obviously we're going to be closer. There's a million more opportunities to be
Smash
close
Brothers
to somebody.
it up every day.
Fuck yeah. And we'd fucking go to strip clubs and, do all the degenerate shit we want to do.
Totally
obviously.
Things normal men do together.
Normal dudes being dudes, my guy. And, like, this is what I'm saying is like, the phones are making it so easy to be lonelier, to put little effort into interacting with other people in your society. And it's one of the most fundamental parts of human nature is community, is being around other people. And I mean, people like to be independent, they like to be self-reliant, but the reality is that it's not that they like validation, it's that it's human nature to be validated. It's human nature to rely on others and for those others to rely on you. None of us could have become the people we are if we were thrown into the fucking wilderness with no other human beings. That there would be no you or me if that happened to us.
We live in a society, Batman.
We live in a society, Batman. Exactly.
So on this note, though, okay, so I will agree that men and women experience loneliness in different ways. And that women might be more fundamentally okay with loneliness. Well, I'll argue it's probably because they have an easier solution to getting rid of their loneliness than men do. But when loneliness manifests in men, you saw that
it's more violent. They're more violent
and toxic. But I was just thinking like vulgar too, like misogynistic. Like loneliness in men, it's a little bit like anti-populism and like how you look at an elite and you cast your problems onto them. With loneliness in men manifest, it's
with lonely men. They do it to women.
They do it to women. You remember? So
yeah.
Did you heard about Trump retweeting this? Or
have I heard about Trump? No, I never heard of that guy.
This guy. He's kind of a big deal. He thinks he's the second coming of Jesus. He retweeted this thing that said Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton only really got where they did because of something to that effect. Did you see that story?
I've heard it. I'm not familiar, but I mean, it's locker room shit, right? Like that's what you're getting at.
I didn't talk like that in locker rooms. But I mean,
maybe you did. No, I'm not saying you did.
I would hope not. I feel like 30 years ago, this alone would be a career ender, and he's still slated to get something like 50% of the votes. It's going to be like 47, 48%. You don't think so?
Well, no, I'm saying yeah. I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. Well, I think his base is locked in. I think the reason why people like Trump is because they were political outsiders before he came into the fold. Like the voting demographic of the Republican Party has changed with him. Like the people who are voting Republican have changed with him because he's invited in very anti-establishment people. Now, anti-establishment's a category. It can refer to people who don't like foreign wars. It can refer to people who don't like foreigners. It can refer to people.
Unfortunately, it also means white supremacists, right? It means lunatics who think the government is their enemy and that believe in a deep state.
Well, that, but it can also. I think it refers to a broad coalition of just kind of people who have felt politically disenfranchised under Obama and the Bushes and Bill Clinton and all those, and the Reagans of the world, those guys, basically. People who never felt at home with those guys, who just have a amalgamation of shit that's just not in the Overton fucking window at all. Just like flat earth, like just everything.
Alex Jones.
Everything under the sun that's not in the mainstream at all. And so what you get from that is you get this amalgamation of people who are like existentially terrified of the status quo. That they are like the status quo of who is leading right now is like an evil rich person who's funded by dark money, and that guy says that he is aware that they're like that, so I'm going to vote for this guy because he's aware of that. And that's all it is. And then all the grievances that are downstream from that, like, oh, the immigrants are taking my jobs, the media
jobs.
is taking the black job, taking all the hip hop jobs. Yeah, the the fucking what else is there? There's fuck. That's the big thing is the immigration thing. Oh, and the foreign wars thing, and the neoliberal trade policy thing. That's a big thing.
Well,
With
they
that
don't
voting
tend to
bloc
support
too.
neoliberal trade. It tends to be opposite. They're
That's
very
what I'm saying.
protectionist.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that they're voting for him because they view neoliberal trade policy as a part of the establishment.
Yes.
They tie that and the immigrant thing and the foreign interventionism thing. These are all the same thing.
It's a very us versus the outsiders kind of thing. Insider versus.
That's what populism is all about, right? Now there's a lot of and there are Democrats who are like that too, but it's not most Democrats.
It just
the Democrats
to be directed at a different group. But you're right, it's not most Democrats.
I don't know if it's directed at a different group. I think it's directed at the same things, maybe for different reasons. So, or it's a different temperament guiding it. Because Bernie Sanders also was also very protectionist, very against a lot of foreign intervention stuff. I don't know, he's not so much now, but he was back in like 2015.
Yeah, but I don't think he was that way because Jews control the world,
That's what I'm saying. Okay. I'm saying same policies, same sort of policy, just for different reasons. There's a different temperament guiding it. Bernie Sanders is more guided by like the left populists are guided by like equality and vague principles like this. There's a temperamental desire for like openness and creativity and diversity in these things. Why? And then with the right populists, it's more about like loyalty to the nation and protecting our own people.
Well, that tends to be very
things like that.
Yeah.
It has a nativist.
But why does it manifest this way in particular in men, but not so much in women?
I think men are more likely to have a conservative disposition than women because one trait that a very strong personality trait that predicts political conservative voting patterns is low in openness, high in conscientiousness. And it's not that women can't be like that ever. It's that it's more likely to happen in men on average. And so that's why. Now, why that is, I don't know. Might be a testosterone thing, might be a socialization thing, probably all of these things to some degree.
Yeah.
And women, it's the opposite. They tend to be more higher in openness. They tend to have these more kind of compassion traits on average. Again, not every woman. A lot of boss ass fucking bitches out there, and I'm not anti boss ass bitch. Okay. But I'm saying that that's not like the majority of women. So that's why I think it's just that. And I just view that as just a fact. Like I don't attribute morality to it. I think there's a place in the world for conscientious, low in openness people. They tend to make pretty good fucking business people. They're pretty fucking good at running businesses because they know how to make decisions. And then people who are higher in openness, people who are more creative, they're really good at coming up with new ideas and innovating things forward into the future and things like that. And there's a place for all these things in society. That's why I support freedom of speech.
I don't disagree there's a place for these people in society, but why is the star of your next movie not going into this? Why is he spending his time playing video games and ranting about it?
No, I'm not going to bring up immigrants. I'm just bringing up. It's just going to be Israel.
I just mean this general person who's professionally online. Why is it that when men manifest their loneliness in toxic ways, it's never to find ways to fit in the ways they might naturally fit? If it is, best fit for them would be entrepreneurship or business or capitalism or anything to this, right? Competitive edges. Men aren't
sports is probably an easier one. Just get into a fucking sport.
Yeah. But the phones are why, right? I guess I just answered the question. Yeah.
But let's nuance it a bit because it's good to nuance.
It's more than just.
Well, it's the phones, but it's like, why is it the phones, right? So that's where the interesting conversation is, because you can't just say get off the damn phone.
There's
you got to figure out. People are on the damn phone for a reason, not just that it's easy, but also and I would push back a bit against. I don't think this is unique to men. I think women also can not fix their shit too because of the phones, but it manifests in different ways. So men will lash out against women, and they will blame women for their inability to deal with their own loneliness. And it's easy to do that with women because most men are straight dudes, right? This isn't really happening to gay dudes, to my understanding. This is mostly a straight guy thing. This is happening to straight dudes mostly. And straight dudes are, when you're a lonely straight dude, when you don't have very strong social ties either to your family or to your friends or having a girlfriend too, the way that you're typically gonna, the first thing you're gonna notice is that you don't have, because that's like love, like having another person that you love unconditionally. That's like the strongest tie that most of us feel that we have for the most part. And so that's what a lot of men and women are jumping to when they're feeling this resentment and they're feeling this isolation. So with men, when they're going against women, they're saying, I don't like that women are fucking whores and they're sleeping around all the time, which they're not, right? It's not true. Women are not whores and not sleeping around all the time. And and women are all on OnlyFans, and they're all a bunch of fucking, what do the red pill guys say? 304, what is it? 404? I don't know what the fucking term
like
is.
their body
Thoughts.
count? What is this? Thoughts?
Bodies, yeah, and body counts, and that's what they're on about, right? And saying, I want women, and they're doing it because they want women to pick them, right? They want women to choose them in the dating pool. Now, women, it's not quite like that. With women, it's like men are fucking trash because all men view me as an object of desire. They don't view me as a person, and that's a generalization. That's also not true. A lot of men are not, most men, I would say, are not trying to use women as a means to an end. They do want to get to know them as a person, and they do want to find love in relationships, but there is a significant chunk of men that don't, and those men do suck. True. But you can't, but when you are a lonely woman and you're applying that to every fucking guy that you talk to, you're going to be, it's like, this is the problem, right? They're assuming that the opposite gender is the worst person that they think will exist. And they're mentally preparing themselves for that. And when they're not, even though they're not that most of the time, but because they are, the normal men and the normal women, they can sense that. And you know what it does, LSP? It gives them the ick. It gives them the mysterious ick. And they don't want to fucking talk to them because of that. And they don't know, and they don't understand that, the lonely people. So the lonely people are like, well, what the fuck? This person obviously is a fucking disgusting, degenerate whore if they're a woman, or if they're a man, they're obviously just a sexist fucking pig who wants to use me as a whole for, and they don't like me. That's how it is. And that's not how it is. But the fucking phones and the social media algorithms that are constantly rewarding them for these feelings and for expressing these feelings are giving them more and more and more content because they make money off of the ad revenue they get from pumping this fucking content to them, telling them over and fucking over again, no, all your preconceptions about the world are true.
Yeah, the algorithm tends to feed them the information they want to hear, tell them they're correct in whatever they believe.
Yes. Doesn't matter if it's true or not, because it'll feed it to you if you are also seeking true beliefs too. Like you know me, I'm big into the housing stuff. And so the algorithm is feeding me like city, like
I hear if we got rid of immigrants, that the housing will solve itself.
Yeah. Yeah, so that seems to be the problem, and that's what my movie is going to be focusing on, is the kind of person that gets into these algorithms. What happens to them? Well, it's not just what happens to them, it's how do they feel while that's happening, and how do I convey how that person
feels? They feel
feels?
under attack. Is there like
they feel under attack?
Is there like a climax to your film?
So there's going to be there. It's not really a climax. It's just kind of a escalation of that sense of dread. And I'm mostly just going to be having the sense of dread express itself in a lot of different ways that you would recognize online. So it doesn't have like beginning, middle, climax, like end kind of structure. It's more like, here we're establishing this sense of dread. Now we're going to show all these different ways as to why this sense of dread is existing, why it's continuing to perpetuate itself. Now, I do want to end the movie by, there's going to be a twist related to this friend, the main character has, and this twist is going to motivate the main character to, spoiler alert, go the fuck outside. And there's going to be a scene where the character's outside and the character is going to discover something about the passage of time that I think everybody will relate to when it comes to COVID. Once he leaves his house, I'll just say what it is, because this isn't the twist. This isn't like the big twist. The big twist is the thing that happens.
Spoil your own movie. Sure, go for it.
Fuck yeah, I don't give a fuck. So this isn't like being released in theaters. I'm not making money off.
Say your truth, King. Just say it. Go.
I'm not making money off of this. I don't give a fuck. So the he's gonna go outside. He's gonna talk to a guy. He's gonna ask the guy, "Hey, do you have the date?" And he's gonna give him the date casually. And you're gonna realize the date is like way forward into the future. COVID's
like 4
long
years after
over.
COVID or something.
Like 4 years, 5 years. COVID's long over. Society is open back up. Everything's fine. And he's just been indoors the whole time.
That's cool.
Now the point of that is, there's a point to that. And the point to that is, and a lot of people, I felt like this during COVID. A lot of this is based off of how I felt.
Am I the only one who had fun during COVID?
Yes.
Tens of thousands of people dying left and right. I just stayed up playing video games like I was a teenager again. It's so awesome. Like, oh, this is horrible. All you stay at home, play video games all day. That's all people do. It's like, oh, I don't get time to do that shit anymore. Let's go.
Listen, it helps. It does help. I'm not gonna lie. That helps a bit.
It sucks that millions of people had to die all across the world, but I got a few months. It's pretty baller.
Yeah, the point is that COVID felt like, this isn't the point of the whole movie. The point of the whole movie is go the fuck outside and put down the damn phone. It's a very boomer point, but I'm going to nuance it a lot. But this ending is just going to just kind of hit home that like, we kind of lost our sense of time during COVID. I went through a entire 3-year relationship where I was engaged, and it still feels like just yesterday I was at my office before COVID happened, right? Like the sense of time that a lot of people felt like like it's like 2023, and people are like, it still feels like
the
it's
shutdowns never ended, right? Everybody still
even though they
got to get the jab, all the vaccine mandates.
Yeah.
What's very timely is, I'm sorry, what's that?
No, go for it.
What's very timely is you're talking about this whole getting lost in the minutia of the internet thing. Your webcam's been tripping the fuck out.
Yeah, I know. It sucks because if my normal webcam doesn't get fixed, I already filmed a whole like 10-minute scene with this of dialogue with an online person with this webcam. And the whole movie is not on this webcam, but it's just for the online conversations. But now I'm going to have to redo that whole fucking scene. Or I could just have an explanation like, oh, the camera broke. Got to get a new one, I guess.
Do it right.
But yeah, I'd have to re-record it. But I feel like this effect, even though it's shit normally, would actually help with the atmosphere of it. So,
would you care to end now, or would you care to talk about the upcoming election?
I do have to go to sleep.
Okay, then I have one last question.
Sure.
If aliens were to land on Earth and they demanded to be taken to our leader.
Pope Francis.
Okay, I dig it.
Yep.
Okay, Layman, thanks for the talk. Your movie sounds cool.
Thank you.
Everything else you said was really dumb, but the movie sounds cool. I'm kidding. Any final words?
No, I'm good. If you want to sub to me on YouTube, follow me on Twitter at @lay_man__. You can find me on Twitter. And that's all I got to say.
Okay. Peace, love, rock and roll.
Tail.